Imagine this. A little girl, trapped in silence, sends a secret signal no one notices. Except one man. What happens next will shock you. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday morning at the Riverside rest stop off Interstate 40. Truckers filled their thermoses with bitter coffee. Tourists stretched their legs after hours on the road, and families herded sleepy children toward the restrooms. Silas Reaper Johnson sat alone at a corner table, his leather vest bearing the unmistakable Hell's Angels patch, the winged death head that made most people give him a wide berth. At 6'4", with a scarred face and arms covered in faded military tattoos, he was used to the stares, the nervous glances, the way mothers pulled their children a little closer when he walked past. He didn't mind. Years in the Marines, followed by 15 years in the club, had taught him that appearances meant everything and nothing at the same time. People saw what they wanted to see. A dangerous biker, a criminal, a threat. They never saw the Purple Heart recipient, the volunteer at the VA hospital, the man who spent every Saturday morning reading to kids at the local library. Silas took another sip of his coffee, black and strong enough to strip paint when something made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Not a sound, not a movement, just an instinct honed through years of combat and countless situations where reading a room meant the difference between life and death. He looked up slowly, scanning the rest stop's dining area with the methodical precision of someone trained to spot threats. That's when he saw her, a little girl maybe 8 years old with blonde hair and wide brown eyes that held too much fear for someone so young. But here's the twist that changes everything. She's not just scared. She's signaling for help in a way no one expects. Keep watching to see how one silent message saves lives. She sat in a booth near the window with a man and woman who, at first glance, appeared to be her parents. The man was heavy-set, wearing a wrinkled business suit and sweating despite the air conditioning. The woman was thin, nervous, constantly checking her phone. But it was the girl who captured Silas's attention, because while the adults talked in hushed, urgent tones, the girl sat perfectly still, her hands resting on the table. And then Silas saw it. A deliberate movement so subtle that anyone not paying attention would miss it entirely. The girl's right hand moved slowly, deliberately, forming shapes against the table's surface. Not random fidgeting, not childish play. She was signing American Sign Language. Silas had learned ASL during his time at the VA, working with wounded veterans who'd lost their hearing in combat. He recognized the signs immediately, even performed as carefully and subtly as these were. Help. Danger. Not my parents. His blood ran cold. The girl's eyes flickered toward him for just a fraction of a second. And in that brief moment, Silas saw everything he needed to see. Terror, desperation, a silent plea from a child who couldn't speak, either because she physically couldn't or because she'd been threatened into silence. Silas set down his coffee cup with deliberate slowness, his mind already shifting into tactical mode. He couldn't just walk over and confront them, not if this was what he suspected. Traffickers were dangerous, unpredictable, and often armed. One wrong move could endanger the girl's life. He needed to be smart, calculated, and above all, he needed backup. Silas pulled out his phone and, keeping his movements casual, typed out a message to his club's group chat. Under the table where no one could see his screen, he wrote, Code Red. Possible trafficking situation. Riverside rest stop. Need brothers now. Silent approach. He hit send, knowing that within minutes every available member of the San Bernardino charter would be en route. The Hells Angels might have a rough reputation, but they had zero tolerance for anyone who hurt children. Absolutely zero. While he waited, Silas kept his attention on the booth, watching without appearing to watch. The man was getting agitated, checking his watch repeatedly. The woman kept glancing at the door, her leg bouncing with nervous energy. They were waiting for something or someone. The girl signed again, slower this time, as if exhausting her courage. Scared. Help me, please. Silas's jaw tightened. He'd seen a lot of terrible things in his life. Combat zones, IED explosions, brothers killed in action. But watching a terrified child silently beg for rescue from strangers who held her captive, triggered something primal in him, a protective fury that he had to consciously control. He stood up slowly, stretching as if working out a kink in his back, and walked toward the counter to order another coffee. The move positioned him closer to the booth, close enough to hear fragments of conversation. 3 more hours, the man was saying in a low voice. Then we make the handoff and we're done, no more complications. What if someone notices? The woman hissed. She keeps trying to get attention. We should have sedated her like the last one. Can't. Buyer wants her alert. Says they pay more when they're responsive. Silas's vision went red. His hands clenched into fists, and it took every ounce of self-control not to grab that man by the throat right then and there. But he couldn't. Not yet. Not with the girl in immediate danger. He paid for his coffee with cash, his mind racing through possibilities. He couldn't wait for his brothers to arrive. What if these people decided to leave? But he also couldn't risk confronting them alone and potentially getting the girl hurt. Then he saw the solution. A young mother at a nearby table was struggling with 2 toddlers and a baby. Silas walked over, his imposing figure making her tense up immediately. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his voice gentle despite his appearance. "I need your help. Don't react, don't look, just listen." The woman's eyes widened, but something in Silas's expression made her nod slowly. "The booth by the window," Silas said, keeping his voice barely above a whisper. "The little girl with the braids. She's not with her parents. She's been kidnapped. I need you to go into the bathroom and call 911. Tell them there's a child abduction in progress at Riverside Rest Stop. Tell them to send units immediately, but no sirens. We can't spook these people." The mother's face went pale. "Are you sure?" "What if?" "I'm sure," Silas said firmly. "I'm a veteran. I work with the VA and I know what I'm seeing. That child is in danger and we have about 3 minutes to do something about it before they leave." The mother looked past Silas at the booth, saw something in the girl's posture that confirmed his words, and nodded. Okay, I'll call right now." She stood up, taking her baby with her, and headed toward the restroom. Silas returned to his table, positioning himself between the booth and the exit. If they tried to leave, they'd have to go through him. The girl saw him move and her eyes widened slightly. She signed again, more frantically this time. "Help now. Leaving soon." Silas gave the slightest nod, letting her know he understood. Then he did something that probably looked insane to anyone watching. He signed back. "Help coming. Stay calm. You're safe." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she gave the tiniest nod and tucked her hands into her lap, understanding that she needed to stop signing before the adults noticed. That's when Silas heard the beautiful sound of multiple motorcycles pulling into the parking lot. His brothers had arrived. Through the window he could see them, 8 bikes, their riders dismounting with the coordinated efficiency of a military unit. They spread out, covering all exits, making it look casual but creating a perimeter that no one would be leaving through without their permission. Tank was among them, the chapter's sergeant-at-arms, and Silas's closest friend since their Marine Corps days. He caught Silas's eye through the window and got a subtle hand signal in response. Hostage situation. 2 suspects. 1 child victim. Tank nodded once and started coordinating positions with the other members. To anyone watching, it just looked like a bunch of bikers taking a break. But Silas could see the tactical positioning, the way they covered sightlines and blocked escape routes. The man in the booth finally noticed the bikers. His body language changed immediately, shoulders tensing, eyes darting toward the exits. He leaned toward the woman and whispered urgently. She looked up, saw the Hell's Angels, and went even paler. "We need to go," the man said, standing up abruptly. "Now." He grabbed the girl's arm roughly, yanking her out of the booth. She stumbled, and for the first time Silas heard her make a sound, a small whimper of pain that made every protective instinct in his body scream. Silas stood up, blocking their path to the door. The other patrons in the rest stop started to notice the tension, conversations dying as they sensed something was wrong. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice tight. "We need to get past." "I don't think so," Silas said quietly, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from years of commanding men in combat. That girl's hurt. Maybe we should wait for the paramedics to check her out. She's fine, the woman said quickly. Just clumsy. We're her parents and we need to go. Really? Silas crossed his arms, making himself even more imposing. Because she's been signing to me for the past 10 minutes. Says you're not her parents at all. Says she's been kidnapped. The reaction was immediate. The man's hand darted toward his waistband, but he never made it to whatever weapon he might have had there. Tank and 2 other bikers were through the door in seconds, their bulk and presence overwhelming. Keep your hands where we can see them, Tank said calmly, positioning himself between the man and the girl. Real slow now. Nobody needs to get hurt. The woman tried to bolt for the bathroom, but another biker, a woman named Raven with arms like steel cables, blocked her path. I don't think so, sweetheart. You're going to stay right where you are, the girl, suddenly realizing she might actually be safe, broke free from the man's grip and ran straight to Silas, wrapping her arms around his waist and pressing her face against his leather vest. Silas's heart broke. He knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level, and signed, "You're safe now. I promise no one will hurt you." The girl nodded frantically, tears streaming down her face, and signed back, "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." The sound of sirens finally cut through the air. Police, not an ambulance. The mother from earlier burst out of the bathroom. "They're coming. I told them everything." Within minutes, the rest stop was swarming with law enforcement, state troopers, local police, and even FBI agents who'd apparently been tracking this particular trafficking ring for months. Special Agent Chen approached Silas, her badge visible on her belt. "You, Silas Johnson?" "That's right. The 911 call said a veteran spotted a trafficking victim using sign language." "That was you," Silas nodded. The girl was signaling. "I recognized ASL. Couldn't just sit there and do nothing." Agent Chen looked at the girl who was still clinging to Silas's leg. Then at the circle of bikers who'd helped corner the suspects. "You know, we've been trying to nail these people for 6 months. They've moved at least 12 children across state lines that we know of. We could never catch them in the act." She shook her head in amazement. "And a biker at a rest stop cracks the case in 15 minutes. The girl cracked the case," Silas corrected. "She's the brave one." I just understood what she was trying to say. A female officer approached gently, kneeling down beside the girl. "Sweetheart, can you tell me your name?" The girl looked up at Silas as if asking permission. He nodded encouragingly and signed, "It's okay. They're police. They'll help you." The girl took a shaky breath and then, in a small voice that suggested she hadn't spoken in days, said, "My name is Sophie Martinez. I'm 8 years old. Those people took me from the park 3 days ago. They said if I tried to tell anyone, they'd kill my little brother." Agent Chen's expression hardened. "Your brother? Where is he?" "They have him," Sophie said, her voice breaking. "In a van, a white van with a blue stripe. They were going to take us both to someone who paid for us." She started crying harder. "Please, you have to find him, please. His name is Miguel. He's only 5. The rest stop exploded into action. Every law enforcement officer started coordinating, pulling up traffic cameras, issuing APBs, mobilizing units to search for the white van. Silas stayed with Sophie, keeping her calm while the chaos swirled around them. He'd learned in the military that sometimes the best thing you could do was just be present, be steady, be a rock in the storm. Tank approached with a stuffed dog from the rest stop's gift shop. "Found this for the little lady," he said gruffly, offering it to Sophie. "Thought she might want something to hold on to." Sophie took the stuffed animal and hugged it tight, managing a small smile through her tears. 2 hours later, the call came through. They'd found the van. Miguel was safe, scared and hungry, but unharmed. The traffickers had been using a warehouse 50 miles away as a staging area, and the raid recovered not just Miguel, but 3 other children who'd been reported missing from different states. When they brought Miguel to the rest stop, Sophie's reaction was everything. She ran to him, scooping him up in a hug that nearly knocked them both over, sobbing with relief and joy. Miguel, a tiny boy with dark hair and wide eyes, looked around at all the police officers and bikers with confusion. "Sissy, who are all these people?" "They're heroes," Sophie said simply, looking directly at Silas. "They saved us. And wait until you hear what happens next. This one act sparks a change no one saw coming." Agent Chen approached Silas one more time as the sun began to set and the operation wound down. "We're going to need a statement from you. Full details of how you spotted the situation, what you observed, everything." "Of course," Silas said. "Whatever you need. But off the record." Agent Chen extended her hand. Thank you. What you did today, you saved that girl's life. Probably saved her brother's too. And who knows how many other children down the line. That trafficking ring was growing. You shut it down. Silas shook her hand. I just did what anyone should do. But most people wouldn't have, Agent Chen said quietly. Most people would have looked away, told themselves it wasn't their business, convinced themselves they were seeing things. You didn't, you acted. That's the difference between a tragedy and a rescue. As the police finished processing the scene and prepared to transport Sophie and Miguel to child services, where they'd eventually be reunited with their frantic parents, who'd been searching for days, Sophie ran back to Silas one more time. She looked up at him. This tiny girl who'd been through hell and survived, and signed, "You're my hero." Silas felt his throat tighten. He knelt down and signed back, "No, you're the hero. You were brave enough to ask for help. That takes more courage than anything I did." Sophie threw her arms around his neck and Silas hugged her back. This little girl who reminded him of exactly why he'd joined the Marines all those years ago, why he'd become a Hell's Angel, why he spent his Saturdays at the library reading to kids, to protect, to serve, to stand between the innocent and those who would do them harm. Tank walked over as Sophie was led away to the waiting social workers. "Hell of a day, brother." "Yeah," Silas said, watching Sophie and Miguel climb into the car, the little girl turning back one last time to wave. "Hell of a day. You know the news is going to have a field day with this," Tank said. "Hell's Angel saves kidnapped children. That's going to mess with some stereotypes." Silas shrugged, calm in the chaos still swirling behind him. "Let them talk. We know who we are. We know what we stand for. Anyone who's actually paying attention already knows we're not the bad guys." "Most people don't pay attention," Tank muttered. Silas glanced at the crowd gathering. "Then maybe this will make them start." The bikers began prepping their rides, the rumble of engines mixing with low murmurs from bystanders. Then the mother who had made the 911 call approached Silas, eyes wet with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, "for trusting me, for stepping in, for not looking away. I'm going to tell my children everything, how you can't judge people by how they look and how real heroes come in all shapes and sizes." Silas simply nodded. A truck driver, a thick burly man with decades of highway in his face, approached Tank's bike. "Always figured you guys were trouble," he said quietly. "I was wrong. Dead wrong. You did right today." More people came, hands extended, apologies offered. The bikers accepted the words with quiet humility. No boasting, no speeches. They'd done what needed doing. That was enough. Silas's phone buzzed. A message from Agent Chen lit the screen. "The parents want to meet you. Sophie won't stop talking about the angel on the motorcycle. They want to say thanks in person. FBI office tomorrow at 2 p.m., Silas typed back. "I'll be there." Tank rolled up beside him. "So what now?" Silas exhaled, looking back once more towards the rest stop, remembering Sophie's frantic signing, her bravery, her trust. "Now we ride home. Tomorrow I meet a little girl's parents." And after that he adjusted his gloves. "We do it all over again." "Do what?" "Pay attention," Silas said softly. "Because somewhere out there another Sophie is waiting for someone to notice her signal." 8 bikes roared to life, thunder in perfect formation. They rode off into the fading sun, long shadows stretching across the highway. Behind them, Sophie drifted into sleep in the back seat of an FBI car, safe at last, clutching a stuffed dog. And deep in her dreams, she remembered the sign language her grandmother had taught her when she lost her hearing. 3 tiny signs that had saved her life. Help, danger, not my parents. A child's courage, a biker paying attention. That was enough to shatter a trafficking network that had run unchecked for months. People would talk about it for years. About assumptions, about appearances, about how sign language can be a lifeline in silence. But to Silas Reaper Johnson, it became just another Tuesday. Another day of being exactly who he'd always been. A protector. A guardian, a man whose oath had never expired. Months later, Silas sat in the children's section of the San Bernardino Public Library, reading to a circle of wide-eyed kids. Sophie and her brother Miguel sat right up front, happy, healthy, full of life. Their family had moved to town to be closer to him. The man who noticed. When Silas closed the book, Sophie raised her hand and signed as she spoke. "Mr. Silas, can you teach us more sign language so if someone needs help we'll know what to do?" Silas's face softened. "Yeah," he said gently. "Let's start today." As the kids gathered closer, eager to learn, Silas realized the truth. The ripple of one moment had become a wave. Sophie was safe. Miguel was healing. And now dozens of children were learning the same signs that had once saved her life. Sometimes the world doesn't change with big speeches or flashing lights. Sometimes it changes because one scared little girl raised her hands and one biker paid attention.